All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Alicia Lopez, and I am the director for the Southeast Florida Clean Cities Coalition. And today we are going to be focusing on idling. We all know that that is more so of a low-hanging fruit that kind of is not necessarily talked about in regards to organizations. You know, lately, specifically, it's been more so of the infrastructure side and kind of vehicle procurement, but this does play to me a very big role when you are looking at vehicle procurement if you need these tools that are necessary to prevent idling. And with that, I'd like to introduce Terry Yates, who's going to be speaking on the technology from the ZeroRPM side. Terry, if you would like, please feel free to introduce yourself, your organization, and how long you've been in the business.
Yeah, I'm Terry Yates. I'm a national sales manager for Mission Critical Electronics, and I cover the whole nation. We own several different types of companies. We own Xantrex, which is known for inverters, solar power, and battery chargers and lithium batteries. And then we own Kuzmal, which does the emergency side of the business, Perky's, which is over the road tractors, and ZeroRPM, which ZeroRPM is idle mitigation, which is what we're here to talk about today. And I just cover the work truck and specialty vehicles. So anything on utilities, that's me, and anything to do with the work truck. So I live actually not too far from Florida. I live on the Alabama Gulf Coast. If you can't tell, I do talk. I was telling Alicia earlier, I talk a little funny. So it is Southern. So I am from y'all's part of the country. So, so anyway, glad to be here. Always glad to tell somebody about my company and what we do. We do something that is definitely part of the green initiative, you know, and that's where our country's headed, you know. So it's great to have a little time to discuss our product with y'all.
Thank you so much for being here, Terry. If you want, you can go ahead and are you able to share your screen? I just want to make sure it still works.
Can we see?
Yes, perfect. And then Evan, I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself before Terry goes into his presentation as well.
Great. Yeah, Evan Miller, also with Mission Critical Electronics, focusing on the ZeroRPM side of things. I was actually, the company's been going since about 2012, ZeroRPM. I joined them not long after they started. Left the company about 6 years ago and have rejoined the last couple of months. Great to see where ZeroRPM has gone over that time. Part of Mission Critical, which is a great organization. So yeah, thank you very much for having us and chatting with the rest of your fleets in your territory.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. And actually, thank you to you and Terry for presenting today. And then Terry, I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to you.
Okay, fine. Just to reiterate, the companies that you see at the bottom, Kuzmal, Perky's, Xantrex, ZeroRPM, that is what we call MCE vehicle power. So we do mobile power for work truck, anything mobile, anything from a simple power inverter all the way up to our Cadillac, which is ZeroRPM idle mitigation, and everything in between. So in the utility business, when you're looking at your fleet, you know, we all understand that there is not a one box that fits everything. You know, there is different applications that take different vehicle power requirements, and we can address all of those and help you go get involved in the green initiative and be more efficient with your fleet. But today, let's talk about, as I call it, our Cadillac. That's ZeroRPM idle mitigation. Now let's do have an understanding on idle mitigation. What idle mitigation is idle mitigation is basically what it says. You're going to turn the engine off and you're going to be able to do your daily work, your chores. I call them chores. Again, that's a Southern term. But you're going to be able to do your work during the day without running the engine and basing all your power requirements on that engine. All right. So we can do that in a lot of ways. I can start off with a IMS idle mitigation system as cheap as $4,000 or $5,000, but it's totally manual. totally manual, and it's not used much because a lot of times we can't rely on the crews out there using it efficiently. So 0 RPM comes into play because it's fully automatic. It does everything for you. Your operators don't have to run it. And as we talk about it, you'll see that as we get along in the presentation. So let's get started. We're going to talk about idling. And let me see if there we go. 0 RPM. So a work truck, the average work truck idles for 4 hours of an 8-hour shift. Now, I've been doing this for quite a while, and I found out that I use this for a presentation, but that's really not true. Actually, most work trucks will idle about 6 hours or better. And it depends on the application. If it's a supervisor's truck, say an F-250, or the boss's truck, whatever, it might idle 8 hours or 10 hours out of the day, because he might be officing out of that truck and he never turns it off. He gets it in the morning and he turns it off. And I know that you guys are in Florida, so you guys understand what humidity and heat is. And we don't want to be hot. When we go to our office, we want our office nice and warm or nice and cool, whatever the situation may be, because we're working out of that. So anyway, let's back to this. I chased a rabbit there a little bit. So 4 hours out of an 8-hour shift, that's what we're going to look at. Alicia's laughing at me.
I know how easily it can, especially when it comes to like transportation, how it you kind of shift gears and you go down a rabbit hole, but we're coming back.
Yeah.
I feel like it always happens in our field.
So we're going to specifically look at one truck today and just look at the effects of one truck in one fleet. 4 hours out of an 8-hour shift is what we're going to base it on. This truck is idling. All right, so Ford says, or actually Argonne Laboratories say it's a gallon of fuel wasted for an hour of idle. Now that can be a little bit more or a little bit less depending on if it's a gas engine or if it's a diesel engine. But the average is a gallon, so that's what I use. So this truck we're talking about, 4 hours of idle, a gallon wasted per hour at 250 days in a year. And that's considering vacations and holidays, one shift per day. And so let's say that truck's 5 years life. At $5, 5,000 gallons of fuel is what that turns out to be. And I don't know what it is in Florida right now, but on this presentation, I used $3.50 per gallon. So in a 5-year period, that means that this truck has spent $17,500 just on idling in fuel. Now, this is one truck. So keep that in mind, and keep in your mind, you know what your fleet is. Do you have 50 trucks? Do you have 100? But we're talking about just one here today. So now let's look at the wear and tear on the engine. Now, this is the Ford number. Ford says when you're idling the engine, that is 33 miles of wear and tear on that motor that you're not seeing on that odometer. So I've run into instances in the last few years where guys are doing their PMs by the odometer. They're not considering the engine wear and tear, but actually the PMM is mainly engine filters and so forth like that. So you need to consider the hours of idling on that engine as far as miles and judge your PMs like that. I have had customers too that have went in for warranty at Ford, and Ford will plug into the black box and they'll say, well, your engine is out of hours on the warranty, because they're looking at hours, not the odometer on the engine. So there's some tidbits to keep in mind, but that's a lot of wear and tear, which causes breakage. And we all know if we've been around vehicles at any part in our life, it is harder for a gas or a diesel engine. It's harder for it to idle than it is to go down the road. Because when it's in idle, it builds up heat. It's not got the air flowing through, so it's not as easy for it. It causes breakage. So same truck, 4 hours a day, 33 miles wear and tear. Now we see that same truck gets 165,000 miles of wear and tear on that engine that you're not seeing on that odometer in a 5-year period. That's a lot of miles. I went and talked to a municipality out in Arizona one day, and that fleet manager he didn't acknowledge this. And then about 15 minutes later, he come back and he said, so you're telling me that truck out there that's got 200,000 miles on it, actually that engine's got 365,000. And I said, based on an average of 4 hours idling a day? Yes, sir. That's a lot of miles on that motor. I've run into a company not too long ago that is talking to me, and they're changing engines very often because they're wearing their motors out because of the idle. You know, now that company, they're idling 6 to 8 hours a day, you know, quite a bit of idle. So they're wearing engines out. But so keep in mind, now let's look at the green initiative. Let's look about protecting the environment. That same vehicle, a gallon of fuel, 1 hour of idle equals 22.06 pounds of CO2s for diesel being put in the air. So if it's a gas, it's 18.95. So this same truck on a 5-year period, the same fuel, we got 55 tons of CO2s emitted in the air. Now, I'm not trying to convince anybody of global warming has nothing to do that. I'm talking about the air that we breathe, and we do need clean air to breathe. So that's what I'm talking about. 55 tons of CO2 in a 5-year period. Let's think about that. What if you had 100 trucks in your fleet? How much you're messing up the air and how much cleaner it would be if you cleaned up that idle. So just some thoughts to think about. So let's look at a summary of that. 1 truck, 4 hours of idling, 8-hour shift, 250 days a year, 5 years of idling. That's 165,000 miles of wear and tear, $17,500 worth of wasted fuel, and 55 tons of CO2 put in the air for 1 truck. And that is just for the 4 hours it's idling. We're not talking about the other 4 hours when it's driving or anything of the sort, just the idle. We do have a solution. That sounds kind of corny. I've told them I'd like to change that because every time I say that, I kind of feel like it's a little corny to say that. I think we got a solution, but it is what it is. That's what we're talking about. We do have a solution because if we can help you stop the idle or mitigate that idle, it's going to have an impact on the environment, on your gas bill, and on the wear and tear on your engines. It's going to help you several different ways. It's going to reduce the fuel consumption if we can mitigate the idle. It will reduce the operating cost because there'll be less breakage on the motor, and reduce emissions. So we're going to breathe easier because we're not going to be putting CO2s in the air. Now, let's talk about why we idle. Most of the time, the reason that we idle is for creature comforts. As I mentioned in the first part of my presentation here, in Florida, you got humidity, you got heat. So why do you idle? It's because you want that AC running, you know, because you're hot, you know. And when you're in your office and you're making a phone call or you're working your laptop or you're taking a break, you don't want to sweat, you want to cool off, you know. So improved operator safety and comfort, that's what we can do, because actually our system, we can turn the engine off and you will get factory heat, factory air from the dash with the factory controls, and nothing changes for that operator. The only thing that's changing is we're turning the engine off. And you're saying, wow, how can you do that? I said the same thing. When I first thought about this, I had ZeroRPM. I said, you can't do that. That engine's got to be running to provide AC. Man, let's talk about that a little bit. So when the operator pulls up and he puts his vehicle in park, then we give him a 5-second countdown, and then we automatically turn the engine off. Our computer does this. He does not flip a switch and do this. All right. We will run his heat, his AC, his power, and you all see that screen. Let me kind of get rid of that. We're going to run everything that he has to do with his job all day long without running the engine. Now we're doing that on lithium battery. So it's not completely 100%, because the lithium battery, when it gets down to about 30%, we're going to have to charge it, because a lithium battery is the same as a fuel tank. You know, when you get low on gas, you got to put some gas in there. So a battery, you get low on charge, you got to put a charge. We take a charge from the factory alternator. So when our battery gets low enough, it will start the engine to take a charge from the engine. But there's more to it than that. Let's kind of get in the nuts and bolts of this thing. How does it work? When the engine's on, you've got a belt-driven alternator that provides the power. When the engine's on, you got a belt-driven coolant pump that circulates the coolant in the engine block that provides the heat when you need heat. And then you have, when the engine's on, you've got a belt-driven AC compressor that turns as the engine's turning, that provides the cooling for the AC. All right, so when the engine is off, you're running on our lithium iron battery, which is the safest form of lithium made. It's a very, very safe form. You have a DC electric coolant pump. And what that means is it's underneath we mount that underneath the hood, and it circulates the coolant in the engine when the engine's off, if you've got it on heat. So if you guys probably don't deal with that much in Florida, but you know, if you're in the northern countries and you want to heat, then that's an important factor, because you want the engine warm enough to provide heat, you know, through the factory dash. So here's what happens when that engine cools off enough that it can't provide heat. We're monitoring that, and we'll start the engine, warm it back up to operating temperature, and then we turn it back off. So we're getting rid of the unnecessary idle. So now let's talk about the important part to Florida. DC electric AC compressor. We have a patented one-way valve that we tie in the Freon lines right outside the factory compressor. So when that engine turns off, that valve opens, and our DC electric AC compressor starts running the whole factory system. The same way the factory compressor does, except it's not running. It's our compressor that's running. Same Freon, same everything, same complete system. So at an idle, when you've cooled the cab down and you pull up and you put it in park and we turn the engine off, our system will provide coolant the same way the factory system was. Nothing's changed. If you guys have any questions, I don't know, I guess you just cut in because I don't see any hands or nothing like that.
Well, actually, I do have a question in regards to the AC. That was one of the questions we had at our stakeholder meeting. So if they were to install this, like their problem was, I guess, I don't know if it's necessary. This is for like more work size trucks. Okay, because they were asking if it can still work off the engine. Can they still run the AC? Because that's a huge problem, obviously, down here during the summer as well. They'll idle. They'll keep the car idling while they necessarily go outside and kind of then come back to the AC for the car. So that was one of the questions.
Very good question.
City of West Palm Beach had.
Let me kind of make sure I'm understanding that question.
Yes.
They want to leave the AC on when they get out of the truck.
Yes.
Yeah, we got a solution.
Okay.
I'm gonna get corny on you again now. We got a solution for that.
That's perfect. No, because that was one of the concerns actually at the meeting on Monday. And I know, Evan, you were able to kind of hear the conversation, but the city of West Palm Beach, they, you know, yes, down here it is very hot. So a lot of the workers like to keep the cars running while they're outside doing their job. So that way, when they come into the car, it's cool, you know, after being out in that sun all day. So that way, since we do have a problem with heat stroke here within our area. So that was one of the questions, like, can they still have it running, the AC, so when they're done, they can go in and cool off without having to be idling?
Very important question, and you're just a tad ahead of me, but I'm fixing to answer your question. What I did thought you was asking at first was, and this is an important part, is once our system is engaged, it will cycle 24/7 till you turn it off. But if I was thinking, you was saying they was going to work on the truck. So anytime that the hood is open on the truck, it disengages us. We will not start that engine at all. So important safety factor, because a lot of people are concerned about that. And that's what I thought you was going to, but let's answer your real question there. Let me show you this here first. This is our screen. And when he puts it in park, the operator does, that's the 5-second countdown. And you can see the battery there is at 100%. That is our lithium battery. But also notice that little key that is white down there in the corner. I'm going to show you how that can change. When we when our system engages, it'll change from the 5-second to the 0 RPM. That means our system is running. We're running and the engine's off. So let's talk about the features, and we'll get to answering your question. We have engine off AC through the factory vents, engine off heat through the factory vents, lithium battery power to everything, automatic recharging. That means that we can charge from the 12-volt alternator or a solar panel. We have solar panels that perfectly fit the roof of a F-series truck, but we have them for transits and everything else. So you can use solar panel to help charge that lithium also, which is also a big green initiative. You can also use shore power. So there's several ways to recharge that lithium battery. But let's talk about zero key, Alicia. That's what you was talking about. Zero key, there's a little button on this dash, and let me go back here just a minute. You see the little round circle underneath the key? That is a button. You press that tab and it turns that key green, like you see here on the screen in the bottom left-hand corner. That is zero key. Once you do that, you can turn the ignition off, take the key out of the ignition, lock the truck up, walk away. Our system will keep the cab just as cool as when you left it. Nothing will change, and it will cycle 24/7 until you put that key back in the ignition. It will keep cycling. And what I mean by cycling is that it will run on lithium battery power. When it gets low enough, it'll start the engine, it'll charge itself, and then it'll turn the engine back off. But all the same time, when all this is happening, you still have the AC blowing out of the factory dash at the same setting you left it. So yes, when you get out of the truck and you leave, I did a inspector's truck out in California, and that was exactly what he did. He was idling his truck. So he would leave the key in it, leave it idling, go do his inspections. You know, a couple of problems with that. Somebody might want to borrow your truck.
Right.
You know, but another thing is too, it's just sitting there idling, you know, and he's just burning fuel. So you push that button, zero key, we turn the engine off. He can lock his truck, walk away, so nobody steals his truck, and everything's the same. He can come back 3 hours later, 6 hours later, 8 hours. I have done that overnight. I always tell people this, and this is a fact. I was in Southern California, and I had in zero key, and I didn't even think about turning it off. And the hotel wakes me up in the middle of the night, and they, Mr. Yates, do you have a gray Ford F-250 out there in the parking lot? Yes, I do. And they said, well, you know, you left it running. I said, oh. So no, don't worry about it. You know, it'll turn itself off in a minute. Just leave it alone. You know, so it won't turn off until you turn the key in there. So there's another button on here called zero idle. In our country, and it's not as enforced as much now as it will be, but there is zones that you cannot idle an engine. Say a hospital, government offices. When you're parked up close, they don't want you idling. So if you are on a zero idle, you can hit this button, and our system will not start to recharge itself. What it will do is it will send you an email and say, hey, you need to move me so I can recharge, or I'm shutting down. But you got a choice. But I'm not starting the engine. So it keeps you from getting a ticket or something like that in a zero idle. Another important feature is zero draw. Our system will protect the chassis battery from being drained by your vehicle's accessories. We all know that all these vehicles have accessories. They have computers, all types of pulls on that factory battery. We will take almost as much as that as possible. We take to the lithium, because the lithium will handle it better than that crank battery. We do not pull power from the crank battery. So we kind of isolate. Now, what we do is actually monitor. So when we start the engine to recharge our lithium battery, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check the crank battery. If the crank battery needs some charge, we're going to let the alternator charge it first. Then as soon as the crank battery is fully charged, then we're going to take all the charge that alternator is putting it out, and we're going to take that straight back to the crank, to the lithium battery. So all of this is done automatically without your your operator does not have to even know that this is happening. You know, it's just going to happen. We can run an electric PTO. I cannot do a bucket truck or digger derrick. We have a previous non-compete contract where we designed those systems for Alltech. And so Alltech uses our system on their bucket trucks. It's called a GEMS unit. You may have some of those in your fleet. The GEMS unit is our unit. It's an earlier model of our unit. We have evolved quite a bit since then. The reason we have evolved because we do a whole lot more different applications than bucket trucks or digger derricks. We can put ZeroRPM on any application that's out there. So when you activate the key, you can see it turns it green. That means zero key is on. That means you can take the key out, lock truck up, walk away. Our system is fully integrated. Here's one difference between us and some of our competitors is everything that we have is designed, engineered, built in Coleman, Alabama. Now, yes, we do buy certain parts from different places, but it all comes in there and it's all designed, engineered, put together there and integrated to make sure it works together.
I have a question for you, Terry. So I don't
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
because so that actually means, so like, for instance, with this whole, we have, I don't know if a lot of people on the call know, but Buy America. So then this would be perfect for those kinds of vehicles. Because I know like with certain funding through DERA, which is through like the Environmental Protection Agency, there's certain kind of parts and certain qualifications that they need for fleets. And they're having a really big push on everything has to be purchased pretty much in America.
Yes.
So that's why I wanted to make sure. So all the parts is everything is from Alabama.
Well, yes and no.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure certain portions are.
Well, it's like on a lithium battery cell. I don't care who the manufacturer is on lithium battery cells. They all come across the water right now.
Yes, they do. You're absolutely right.
That may change in the near future. You know, there's a lot of things happening, as you know, with the GM and Ford and this and the other putting plants in and stuff. That may change in the future, but as of right now, it is not. So our cells come across the water for our batteries, but we assemble them, test them, and put them together in Coleman, Alabama.
Perfect.
So
very good.
also our Intellimetrics comes from Germany, but it's built, you know, all put together in Coleman, Alabama. One thing about it is that ZeroRPM, since we bought ZeroRPM, they build our large batteries for Xantrex, all of our lithium batteries, you know, so there's a lot going on there in Coleman, Alabama, you know.
Very cool.
But what I was going to say about the system integration is that by us buying all the products, engineering everything together and building it, putting it together in Coleman, Alabama, that means everything's working together. That means if you put this in your trucks, you got one guy to call me if you got any kind of issue. I have competitors out there that will buy 5 or 6 different boxes and plug them together and say it's going to do the same thing as mine. Well, here's the problem with that is when one of those parts don't work anymore, you call them, they're going to say, well, Joe built this, so let me give you Joe's number. So we don't do that. Everything is ZeroRPM, 100%. We answer for it, we service it, we build it completely. Versatility is we can put this on in there. I've already explained that. We can put this just about on anything you got in your fleet. I will say this, the criteria of where it's going to help is I need a vehicle that's at least idling 4 hours a day to make it a viable solution, you know, monetarily.
I have a question for you, Terry. Of course.
Sure.
So, like as far as like maybe passenger vehicles, would that work? I guess the one that comes to mind is really like maybe law enforcement that might be idling for longer periods of time as opposed to maybe some other fleets. But would that system also work in those vehicles for law enforcement?
Yes, it will. Here's the problem we usually have with law enforcement, and I don't handle the emergency vehicle applications, but I do know this. they put so much things in those vehicles. You know, sometimes it's a space, and then sometimes we have to add an extra battery pack or something just to run all of the electronics and stuff they have in there. But it can be done. You know, it's
Okay.
just a matter of if there's enough room for us to place it in. So let's say that you got a Tahoe,
Yes.
you know, yeah, that would probably be doable. But you know, if it was a car,
Yeah, the regular like little police cruisers.
yeah, that might be a problem, you know.
You know, and sorry, I'm curious about like with electric vehicles, because we do have a police force that has electric vehicles now too. And I'm just
Mhm.
curious about, I know there's nothing coming out the tailpipe, so I guess there is no idling for that.
Well, there is no idling, but
know.
I will mention this, Alicia, I'm glad you brought that up. I have a solution for that too.
Hey, all right.
So I have a company that they have got a fleet of like the E-Transits and the Mach-E's,
Yes.
and they want to do like they use laptops.
Mhm.
They have a strobe that they put on the roof. They have, you know, little odds and ends that they have a need for power. If you put that on the chassis,
Mhm.
then that cuts down on your mileage that you can run on a full charge. Anything that you add to power to an E vehicle cuts down on. So if let's say an E vehicle runs 200-mile radius on a full
Yes.
charge, and then you start putting some add-ons on that, now you might be down to 150, maybe 125. So it cuts the radius down when you're going to have to charge it up. So that presents a problem in a lot of applications. So here's what I've done. I have got a 125 amp hour battery, lithium, with a small inverter and some solar panels that I can put on an E-Transit or on a Mach-E. I can't put the solar panels on the Mach-E, but it's a standalone system and it does not plug into the E-vehicle whatsoever. Right now, I don't think it's a smart idea for anybody, any of us, to start plugging into these E-vehicles. You know, I do know I met a guy the other day and he was doing it. And I said, you know, do you want to buy one of those? Because the first thing that happens, you're going to own that one. You know, so this is a standalone on those applications, you know, so we can do that. So we've been around since 2012. This said 47 states. I think we're in every state now. Through Alltech, we're all over the world, you know, just about. So it's a proven system. This is not new. This is a proven system. So this picture right here is the Power of One. This is not a picture of ZeroRPM. This is just all the stuff that we can do, you know. So it's batteries, alternators, you know, auxiliary battery banks, lithium batteries, inverter chargers, solar. I can do all of this. And let me say this, one of our expertise in our company is that I can take any application you got, and I can, if it's a ZeroRPM idle mitigation application, that's great. But if it's not, if it don't fit that bill, then I can help you with another system that might work better for it. You know, it may not be maybe it don't idle 4 hours a day, you know, something like that. So just keep that in mind. So I want to look at an ROI. Now I did this for a customer. So let's look at the monetary side of this thing. This is an ROI based on a inspector's truck that I was telling you about in Arizona. Okay. They turn their vehicles every 7 years. So that's what his turn is. So in that 7-year period on this vehicle, we mitigated 82% of the idle. If you can follow me, that's down in the bottom next to the corner on the left in the green. 82% of the idle we mitigate in 7 years based on his idling figures that he gave me from Geotab. So in that 7 years, we'll save him $55,250. Also, big number here, in that 7 years, we'll turn off and save 10,049 lifetime engine hours on this engine. Now, like I told this customer, I know that's money, but I can't put a dollar figure on that. And he told me, he said, Terry, I can. He said, if you can save me that many hours on that vehicle, then I don't turn that vehicle in 7 years. it'll be 8, maybe 9 years. And every year that you extend the life of that vehicle, that's a minimum of $15,000 in my pocket. And I said, well, there you go. So that's not calculated in the 55,000. So in the top right-hand corner, you've got an IMS4. That's the system that this vehicle took. Then you look in the middle row, you got an annual total savings of 7,800 total engine savings and 1,436 engine hours every year. CO2s, every year we're going to prevent 12 tons of CO2s being put in the air for this one vehicle. Annual fuel savings on this vehicle was $6,170. We extended the PMs from 24 to 54 days, which we guesstimated, this is a guesstimate figure, that's going to save about $1,700 a year in filters and PM changes. Now, what's not figured on this, if you hadn't noticed, this is a gas engine. Because if you look at the annual DEF savings over here, if you've got a diesel engine, there is big time savings, not only in the DEF fluid, but we all know that when you idle a diesel, that is when the DEF system has a problem. And so there's a big problem with the regen and the downtime and what you have to go through to get that done. By us turning the idle off, we can almost eliminate that. But we can, it's not totally eliminated, but we can sure stretch it out where it's not a big deal anymore. The payback on this vehicle was 2.74 years. Payback, which was 155.2% return on investment. And I believe every one of us would take that return on investment every day. So this ROI is what I do for any company that is interested. So when we look at the next steps after this presentation, if you are interested, if you'd like to talk about this, here's my numbers, or Todd Self, he's the director of sales. He was supposed to be, he usually does part of this presentation with me, but I think I do it just well by myself. That was a joke. But anyway, you can contact one of us and tell us exactly, let's talk about the application you've got. And if you've got some numbers from like Geotab or whatever you use on idling, we can actually do an ROI and let's see if this makes monetarily sense to you. I will say this, that the normal system is roughly about $26,000 installed. That's a guesstimate because I can't tell without the application to give you an exact price. So that may be a little high on some applications. It probably is on a lot. But if you'd like to move forward, like I said, let's talk about it. Let's look at some applications and let's do some ROIs and let's see if it makes sense. I will say this, I don't want to sell you or try to sell you anything that don't make sense. That's bad business. So I insist on us doing an ROI and let's kind of delve into the numbers. Let's make sure we're making smart decisions as we move forward, you know, in this green initiative. We all need to make the right decisions. Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to ask, do you guys implement the ISG system, the integrated start generator system? It's kind of basically for standstills. You can see it in mostly sedans and vehicles like that.
To start a generator, is that what you're talking about?
No, integrated start generator, the ISG system. Basically, it's to reduce the fuel consumption by automatically shutting down the engine when the vehicle's in a standstill.
Our system completely does that 100%.
Okay, so you guys already, it's already like an advanced version of that?
Yes, it's an advanced version of that because like if the vehicle's at a standstill, basically our system is going to turn the engine off. And when the battery gets low, we'll start the engine to take a recharge and then we're going to turn it back off. And it's going to cycle like that in a standstill. I will tell you this, when on a vehicle that say is stationary, you're going to plan on mitigating about 50% of the idle, maybe 60%, you know, and here's the reason why. If you have an application that say makes 4 stops a day, and in between those stops, it drives 30, 45 minutes, and let's say it's got a 200 amp alternator on it, well, that 30, 45 minutes, you're charging the battery just in drive time. So you're going to be able to mitigate more of the idle when you have that kind of an application. When it's a standstill, you're not driving it. So that means that it's going to turn the engine off, use the battery, turn the engine on to charge the battery. It's almost a one-to-one situation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. But it still does work, and it still does exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
And then Terry, I had a question. I'm not sure, like specifically maybe about work trucks or if they all have keys, but I was thinking of like the push start vehicles, like, I guess that's more of the sedan or maybe like suburban size, but would the technology work with those push start vehicles
and
as well?
I'm glad you asked that. When we're looking at push starts, most of your fleet vehicles, most of the vehicles we do are pickup trucks, and so forth like that. Most fleets want keyed trucks because they want to make extra keys, so forth like that. We're getting into where a lot of vehicles, because of the vehicle, nowadays you just can't pick and choose. Sometimes you have to take what's available and you're getting a push start,
That is
we
true.
had we have had some issues with push start. I'll be quite honest with you. We've got that figured out for the Ford right now, working on the Chevrolet. That would be an issue. I'm not going to tell you we can't do it, because we
Yeah.
can. We're doing it, but it's not as easily done as with a keyed vehicle.
I have a feeling. Yeah, I don't know why I was just thinking about that, because I know a lot of the manufacturers now, especially the newer cars, they have that push. I personally don't like the push start, but that's just me. But so that's why I was
Mhm.
curious of kind of how this technology would work. I
Right.
was going to say, I definitely want to open up the floor. I don't know if anyone else has any questions in regards to like some of the technology.
Hey, Alicia, it's Lee Grant has got me.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry I'm late. Terry, I came out of Connecticut, and when you guys were starting up, I think you worked with Yale University on police cars. Were you around then?
Well,
Lee,
again,
Lee, I was actually at that meeting. I remember Yale. Yeah.
Yeah, what I know, I think you got, I don't know if you had the lithium systems yet at that time, but I think there was too much stuff in the back of the police cars because up there it's not only air conditioning, it's heating too. So it's the whole gamut of hotel stuff.
Yeah, the
So-
challenge that we had with Yale, they were using Ford Explorers, and the shelving system that they had in the trunk actually pivoted up so that they could use the wheel well for some extra storage. So with that whole system pivoting up, we couldn't mount our system anywhere really in the trunk. So part of what we have to do is just, analyze, like in a Tahoe, there's a lot more space, but what is being used in the back of that vehicle and where can we install our system?
Yeah. Okay. So basically you guys are getting into the, looks like pickup and bigger arena. And did I hear you? Are your systems for both heating and air conditioning, or just primarily working heating down? I mean, air conditioning down here.
It's both. So heating and air conditioning. Yeah, further up north, we have different options for heating if that's needed, fuel fire heaters, everything else. So depending on the application and the needs, we do provide complete HVAC, heating and air conditioning, and that's run off of the factory controls. So nothing changes from an operator side of how they are pulling that air conditioning or heat. So
you're using an S-bar type system for heating. Did I hear that correctly?
We can do for fuel fired if they need something more heavier duty up north, or our standard is just the we just really use the block temperature and have a coolant pump on there.
Okay. All right. I'm sure I'll think of something else, but
let me throw something else in here that we hadn't talked about too, is the size. Most of our units are what we call an all-in-one, and it's in a white metal casing that's about the size, a little bit bigger than a carry-on suitcase. So that'll kind of give you a figure of size. It's about 30 and a half inches long, about 15 inches tall, and about 12 inches wide, something like that, about the size of a carry-on suitcase.
So sorry, Brian, one more time. So your systems here really don't run up against the weight issues that the Class 8 vehicles run up against, from what I'm gathering, because you're basically working in maybe Class 6 and below or something like that. Am I right?
Yeah, I run up to all the way. We do Class 8s, but my realm is pretty much everything under that, and our system weighs a little bit less than 200 pounds.
Okay, so you don't want to run up against the weight requirements, because a lot of states have exempted the APUs of various types that have been put on up to several thousand pounds. I'm sure you're aware of that in other states.
Yeah, but we're less than 200. We very seldom run into any kind of issue with weight.
Okay.
And then I just had a quick question. I know, Terry, you mentioned this was kind of out of your wheelhouse, but you guys do have something for like the emergency response vehicles? Because I know that those are, required to pretty much, they're exempt, I would say, from kind of like the anti-idling kind of stuff. So that's why I was just curious about like, do you guys have a solution maybe for those types of vehicles as well?
We do, and actually it's the same system. And this is
Okay.
let me kind of explain this.
Mhm.
In our company, we have different, what we call verticals. Okay. I
Okay.
am the work truck and specialized vehicle vertical.
Okay.
Kuzmal handles the fire trucks and the emergency vehicles. So the police units, the ambulances, and the fire trucks are all under Kuzmal. But we both run the ZeroRPM system. So it's the same system. It's just different sales guys.
Okay. No, that works. Because as Clean Cities, we do work with some of our first responders, and I actually provided a training recently for them. And so seeing kind of like the fire trucks and, the ambulances and things of that sort. So I was like kind of interested. I'm like, okay, I know they're always on. So I'm just curious of how that technology would work with those first responder vehicles.
Yeah, Todd and Evan can help you with that.
Okay.
And then Director of Sales at Kuzmal, which is Danny Graham, would be more than glad to help you with that. Like I say, I mainly stay with the work trucks and especially vehicles. Now, I will say this: I have customers that do like SWAT command centers.
Okay.
And I take care of that because on the SWAT command centers, it's a exuberant build. Let me just say that to power one of those without running the engine.
Definitely.
That's Lee. A couple other questions. How much of your equipment is made in the United States, and are in the deals and the contracts you have? Are you running up against Buy America issues?
I haven't so far, and as far as a percentage wise, I would be lying if I told you I could tell you because I can't give you a percentage. I'm going to guesstimate that it's probably around 60-65% in America. I will say this, like the battery cells, like I was saying earlier, anybody that builds a lithium battery, their battery cells are coming across the water. They may be building it here, but their battery cells are coming across the water. That may change in the near future, but as of right now, they're all coming across the water.
You mean your battery cells? You're talking about the components for the battery?
That is correct, the cells. So the lithium battery might have 12 cells in it. We buy those cells from across the water, and then we put them in a cell, and then we actually do the electronics and stuff like that and build the battery here.
Are you going to buy anything from Proterra and their system, which is you're in Alabama, right?
Coleman, Alabama. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So are you going to go over to South Carolina and buy some of Proterra's batteries?
No, I'm not familiar with Proterra, but we build our own batteries.
Oh, okay. So do your batteries have systems in them where you won't have a runaway lithium issue with it?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Now we also do, I will say this, our ZeroRPM unit has a lithium battery pack in it. Then we also at ZeroRPM, we manufacture standalone batteries, like for auxiliary battery banks. I sell those also on different applications, and I've got them in like anywhere from 100 amp hour all the way up to I do 12, 24, 48, and 51 volt systems. So like when I do a blood mobile or, something like that. I may be running that off of 51-volt batteries or 410 amp hour batteries. Most of those are all built in 0 RPM in Coleman, Alabama.
Okay,
Lee,
are you on the GSA contract by any chance?
No, sir. I'm a manufacturer, so I can't be, that'd be for a builder or somebody I sell to. My main customers are OEMs,
Okay,
or
good.
big
No,
upfitters and so
That was a bad question. Good answer.
forth.
Lee, just to circle back to your question. So we get the cells coming in from China, but we actually make it a battery in Coleman, Alabama, and that goes all the way through to punching our own sheet metal. So we make it a battery. We have sense strings. Our system monitors each individual cell within that battery. So we are monitoring cell level activity. So, you talk about any kind of thermal runaway or anything else like that. We monitor it, and we can shut down that cell if we detect any kind of issues. So there's a lot of safety features within the actual system that we control to make sure that everything is safe and operational. Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was going to say you're muted, Lee.
Sorry, you're still on mute.
We can't hear you, Lee.
Does the
There-
system transmit that you have a bad cell, or does it automatically shut it down and bypass it and continue to charge with bypassing the bad cell?
Yeah, Terry, I believe it does. It shuts down that cell without having to, we obviously pick up that there's an issue with it. We do shut down that cell to make sure that there's no further issue with that. And then through telemetrics, you can also see the reporting of what's happening to the activity.
I will say this, let me speak to that just a second. Our system manages, our battery management system works on, it manages every cell singular to keep all the cells working and to keep them all level. A lot of our competition, most of our competition, they look at the whole battery. So when a cell drops, pretty much they don't know about it until that battery's over and done with. When our system sees a cell is lacking, then it's going to concentrate on getting that cell back up to the same level as the other cells. Does that make sense?
Yep. Did you design your battery management system, or did you buy it from somebody?
Most of our battery management system, now 0RPM had designed, and they had built the battery management system that works in the 0RPM idle mitigation system. A lot of our other batteries are actually designed by Xantrex in Burnaby, which is one of our companies. So we design our own batteries, and 0RPM does builds most of them.
Yeah, the one thing I always look at when I talk to battery people is, okay, you build your batteries and you have your own battery management system you design, because a lot of people buy battery management systems or have in the past, and that's usually a failure.
Yes, they buy, like on our I have auxiliary batteries that are 310 amp hour battery and our 410 amp hour battery, and then our 51-volt 100 amps. They have the built-in battery management system built inside the battery. They also heat their cells, which is a big deal about lithium, because lithium won't take a charge, when it's colder than 32 degrees. So, our batteries are not really even batteries anymore. They're smart cells, what I call them. They have computers in them. They heat their cells. That the battery management system regulates all the charge and discharge. So they're smart cells, really.
Do you have a coolant system with that? Are do you have both ways to keep it as a sweet spot, or do you just do the heat part?
We never had a problem with the coolant, because it'll charge and discharge up to 140 degrees, I believe it is. The cooling part is the issue, because it'll discharge, but it won't take a charge when it's under 32.
Yeah, I know. We thought up in the north we would lose 50% of the range of a vehicle when it got down in the 0 degree weather.
Yeah. Feel free to contact me or Todd, either one, if we need to go any further with, any questions, or if you got some applications you want to discuss and see if it's really a viable solution for you, or if one of our other solutions are, we'd be glad to discuss that with you.
I'm a former Clean Cities coordinator. I'm on the board of, I had the board of one in Connecticut, but
Okay.
I'm also on the board of TEP, Transportation Energy Partners. So
Yes, sir.
I've been doing this for 25 years. So I was asked to ask questions, so I asked questions.
And we're happy to answer and give you the best shot we got, on this. Most definitely.
I wanted to say, I noticed that we're at the top of the hour. It's 12 o'clock. So I just wanted to really thank Terry and Evan. Terry, thank you so much for an informative presentation, answering questions. Evan, thank you so much for being awesome and participating with our stakeholders, especially on the meeting on Monday. So I will put this, of course, the recording on the website, but I just wanted to say thank you all for participating. Thank you for asking questions. Please feel free to reach out to me, Terry, Evan. I will definitely be passing around your guys' contact information to everyone. But like I said, thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.